Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. And we start this episode with a little sad news. As we all know, Hank Steinbrenner a couple weeks ago did pass away, but now there's been another death in the Yankee family. Former GM Bob Watson, who was GM for the Yankees for a short amount of time. He came on board after the 95 division loss to the Seattle Mariners and was a Yankee GM up to the start of the 98 season, did step down in February of that year just before spring training, and that's when Brian Cashman then took the reins, and he's been there ever since. But Watson, responsible for bringing in Joe Torre for the 96 team. We all know what happened after that. The two of them were actually teammates back in the 70s for Atlanta. Watson, also a former player, moved to into the front office in the early 90s with the Houston Astros, became the second African-American GM in baseball history, and eventually the Yankees got him on board, again, helped engineer that 96 team. But he didn't really stay for a long period of time. Again, just due to maybe just workload and personal stress and all that stuff, did step down in 98 and then moved on. So he does pass away, unfortunately, from kidney disease. And, of course, we just wish the best for his family. So now moving on to our next guest, friend of the show. He was actually with us during the playoffs last season from WFUV Sports, Emmanuel Berbari. All right, welcome back to the show. It's great to see you again.
Great to be here, James. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Now, last time we were speaking, we were riding high. I think it was like right after the Yankees swept the Twins in the divisional series. And it was like, I think it was like after game one of the Houston series. And we were like, oh, man, I think we go to the World Series. And ever since then, it was kind of like, so I don't know. We might have jinxed the team. I don't know.
It's possible we were riding a little too high after that game one. I know they had that 7-0 win and Gleyber Torres dominated. And then we recorded the show and we were thinking, are they going to run the table here? But game two was close. And that was really the turning point of the series, as we recall, because the Yankees had a real opportunity to get out of Houston up 2-0 rather than just salvaging the split. And then everything turned for the worse in games 3 and 4. So it was a rough series and a lot of revelations about what may have been going on in Houston, but it was a tough one to say the least.
Yeah, and at least DJ LeMahieu gave that a little moment. It was game 6, whatever, the 2-run home run, at least a home run to tie it, made it 2-2, and then but then of course Altuve hits the home run off of Chapman, which we all know why. Don't take my shirt off, and that whole deal.
One of the stranger things we've seen, really, and that's why some people are like, don't speculate as to why he was doing that. But I've never seen something like that before where someone is so adamant that you can't touch me. I just hit a walk-off home run to send my team to the World Series, something that's happened only a handful of times in baseball history. You're probably elated. You're past the moon. And the one thing you're concerned about is your shirt. So I think we have a decent idea as to what was going on.
Yeah, and I guess, at least for Houston, this, idea that we're not going back to baseball right away, I guess it helps them a little bit that, at some point they're going to be on the field. They're going to get booed, of course, but I just think that the fact that we have this period now where people almost maybe even forget about it a little bit or just not as mad about it, it almost helps them a little bit. Because I think as soon as they were getting back on the field this year, let's just say there was a normal baseball season, they were going to hear it really. I mean, every visiting ballpark they go to, they're just going to get, showered with boos.
Oh, if this season had started in April, there were going to be fans coming at the Houston Astros, unlike we've seen in a pretty long time with any team in history. But I think now you're right. It'll be pronounced, but I think the reaction will be more in the background because we may not have fans by the time baseball returns. Almost definitely won't have fans. And then yeah, people are going to remember, but they'll be more focused on the baseball in front of them because they're just eager to get some sort of sports back in their life. So I don't think that's going to be in the forefront of their mind when sports do officially come back. And you add the element of not having fans in the ballpark, and Houston almost gets off scot-free for 2020.
Pretty much them, and even Boston as well. I think even Boston fans were going to be saying something. I think the Boston angle as well. They got caught, but that whole thing just slipped under the rug. They lost a second round draft pick and some video managers banned from his booth for a year, something that doesn't really affect anybody. So that pretty much just goes right under the. Nobody even talks about the Boston one as well. So they both of them pretty much getting off, pretty close, scot free on that. Yeah,
both of them could be perceived as maybe a slap on the wrist. It really wasn't much of anything, and I think the penalties would have been much harsher if they came down on players, but the problem there is they wouldn't have uncovered as much if they didn't interview the players and promise them immunity. So it was a tough situation for Major League Baseball, and you get the sense that we're never really going to get the fullest extent of what happens with Houston, Boston, and maybe even other teams, just due to the fact that people wanted to move on and they wanted to advance the sport forward. So it's tough. I don't think in these situations you ever get a full picture, but I think we can assume, especially with stuff like Altuve, that some sort of foul play was going on at least through 2019.
Yeah, probably. Like, even if, again, you don't want to punish people harshly because then it's like you have to reveal what happened and makes all the sport look bad. And who knows what other teams are doing little things like that, more or less. It just seems like the one good thing out of all this is that they're really going to stop, at least going to limit now the sort of live video feeds that they have maybe in these hallways and tunnels. It's like, oh, no, we're just looking at pictures to see if they're warmed up, or we just want to see the split of how it looks. But, they're going to finally start cutting these live feeds where who knows what angles these cameras are. They're looking at the catches, what signs he's throwing down. Are they trying to read lips and stuff like that?
There have been regulations, but this has gone relatively unregulated for several years. You have all these major league teams throughout the league that have those video replay rooms essentially right behind their dugout, and they're going back and forth in the middle of the game. And you can argue what's fair play and what's foul play and go on and on about that. But there is something to the technology that has overtaken this game, and you don't hear a lot about it. There have been some memos issued behind the scenes, but we haven't really made a big deal of it until Houston was the poster child of, okay, they won the World Series. They went above and beyond with the trash can banging and all that stuff. We need to go after them. So I think it at least raises the eyebrow of, we need to regulate this excess of technology because it could get out of control in terms of what teams can do and how they can get ahead.
Yeah, and I think baseball, it opens itself up to that because it's really the only sport of all of them where it stops in the moment. Like, basketball is just continuous action. Football, I know they have to go through plays, but hockey's always things going on. But baseball is like where it's the play that stops for a moment. The batter walks out of the box, the pitch is sitting on the mound a little bit, doodling around a bit. There's time where you could get this information and pass it along. So I think that's why baseball is more susceptible to this type of stuff, where basketball, well, even if you got the information or you got some video footage with basketball, they throw the play in and everything's fast. There's no time to get some sort of information over. So baseball, of all the sports really, where it stops in the moment, that's what's good about baseball, but also that's what hurts it, where, you have 10, 20 seconds where you could get some piece of information to someone who could do, something unscrupulous like that.
That's why it's such a methodical game, as you were saying. And whether you're doing it from the dugout relaying signs or when someone's on second base, it's so possible because the Red Sox with the Apple Watches, a lot of it had to do with runners being on second base. And that's been done in baseball for a long time when you even discount technology. But with the Astros, that's why it's so easy to believe that someone like Altuve could have had a buzzer strapped to him, because there is that 10 seconds, 5 seconds after the sign goes down where the pitch is being set up, where it's easy. If you relay that sign from the dugout and someone feels, okay, a breaking ball's coming, a fastball's coming, that's such an inherent advantage that you just can't discount.
Yeah, and I remember that last at bat. I think Chapman threw 3 sliders low, and Altuve didn't whiff it at him because obviously he probably knew breaking balls are coming, don't strike, it's not gonna be a strike zone. And then I guess 3-0, he didn't feel the buzz or whatever. So all right, I'm getting a fastball, and just sat on it, and boom, there you go.
Yeah, and people could make the case that Chapman didn't make his best pitch, which is true, but there's always the chance that you don't make your best pitch and it's fouled off or something different happens with it. We see that all the time in baseball. If you're dead red waiting for it and you get it and you clobber it, it just leads you to believe something was going on. And it's unfortunate that had to make its way into the game, because whether teams were using video replay rooms or not, if there were buzzers, if there were trash can bangs, which we know that went on, that just goes beyond anything we've ever seen.
Yeah. So, turning the page now to this season, first of all, I'll say congratulations. I see you got the promotion at WFUV at Fordham, being the sports manager there. So, and I see you actually got a kudos from Michael Kay. So, how did that feel when you kind of saw that acknowledgement from him?
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It was great to get the position first and foremost, because just working around my peers for a few years now, it's something you strive for, and to get that recognition and to be able to move into that position where hopefully you can make everyone around you better now. It's a great feeling. And yeah, it was nice to get some kudos from Michael Kay, someone I've long looked up to. And that Fordham connection is always so strong between the school and its alumni And it's always great when they're able to, give a nice little heads up, and it definitely makes you feel great inside. So yeah, I appreciate Michael, of course, taking the time to send that.
Yeah, that was cool. He did that. And, obviously I went to Fordham as well. But see, I think you took better advantage of it. I just went there. As soon as I done class, I'll just go home and play video games. So, I envy you there at the. I mean, you do a lot of cool stuff, play as well as beat reporting for the Yankees. So I think that's an awesome opportunity, and I definitely you deserve the promotion. I listened to you on the radio. I mean, you sound great, sound amazing. But you kind of have your hand in a bunch of different things. Like so, I know it's put on your spot, but let's say you had an ideal job in sports or sports reporting, whether where would you like to be? I mean, would you like to be a Vin Scully type doing play-by-play for one team? Would you like to sort of be an on-air personality, sort of like on The Fan? Or would you like to sort of be like a beat reporter, like like Brian Hawk, for example, just kind of follows the Yankees? What would be a dream job if you could pick one?
The cool thing about Fordham, as you mentioned, is it's given me the opportunity to kind of dabble in different things, and I've gotten a sense of what I like, what I don't like, and I would be cool doing any of those things. Just working in sports and around sports would be such a dream for me, that if I was to do any of those things, I would certainly love what I do every day going to work. And I think that's the main goal. But if I had a preference, like an ideal job, play by play for a team or a network ultimately would be the top goal for me, because I think when I'm doing play by play, that's where it feels the least like work. It feels like I'm just locked in and I'm consumed by the game, and everything's just flowing, and it's a blast. It's a passion. So I would say that's the ideal job, would be play-by-play of some sort.
Now, I know right now we just don't know where the world's going to be 2-3 months from now. I mean, have you heard any whispers or any ideas like how they're going to handle college or college sports, coming up this fall?
It's interesting, because we don't even know when we're going to be back on campus, and it's going to have to be that before we start assembling people and playing contact sports and having fans and having everything that goes into it. So there's no idea of a timetable in terms of when we'll be back on campus, when classes will be in person rather than virtually. But the Atlantic 10, the conference that Fordham is in for every sport but football, if I'm not mistaken, they just announced that there's going to be a new format for how they do fall sports and spring sports. So men's and women's soccer, volleyball, baseball, softball, they're going to condense their schedule and regionalize it by 25%. And also the championships will be reduced to 4 teams, and there will be a site that's most convenient to all of them. So they're trying to make it easiest for travel purposes, to make sure they're not putting the athletes and the coaches, for that matter, in harm's way. And I think they have a good plan in place. So whenever we do get back on campus, hopefully sooner than later, there will be sports to come along with it.
Yeah, I'm just saying it'd be kind of, just in terms of working with, let's say, working with another broadcaster next year. I mean, it's kind of weird. Like, are you going to have to both wear masks? Like, are they going to keep you separated? It's just kind of funky. And I guess all that stuff's going to be worked out. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a different look, I think.
It is tough from a media angle, because they're even trying to figure out right now with the return of baseball, okay, who's allowed in the stadium? The players are. There probably won't be fans, but the broadcasters may broadcast from home, and they might put them in the Yes Network studios for the Yankees and have them call the game from there. And the media, sure, there isn't the element of being there that they need to have, but I don't think there's going to be clubhouse access this year. They'll probably have to bring the players, like they do in the postseason, to a press conference room and keep everybody socially distanced to make sure there's no sort of outbreak once it returns, because we know how that went down the first time around, whereas a ripple effect and all the sports ended up getting put on hold until further notice. So it's going to be a different media outlook. You mentioned the booth in the fall. I'm not sure what that will look like, but hopefully we are back to sports. So hopefully radio will come along with that.
Yeah, I was kind of going to ask that too, because just it turned out I don't think they're going to let reporters into the locker room. So the sort of after game where it plays at the locker with the towel on his shoulder and getting that interview, that's probably not going to be there until a year from now. Like you said, they'll probably have to bring them out to a separate area. And, it might be a situation where you're not really capturing that player in the locker room because, maybe the game's fresher on their mind and you might get a more realistic answer, or you might get a different answer. Whereas, if you're bringing them to a separate room, all right, they've had a half hour, an hour to think about the things, and then that might give you a different answer than getting that microphone right in front of the face right as the game ended, you know?
It's a great point. You have some time to think. You have a lot of distance from your reporter, and you consider what reporters use, and yes, you can still ask the questions. Yes, you can still get your quote. You can do a lot of the things you normally do, but when you talk about insiders and some of these people that are at the top of their field and know these players and are able to talk to them, especially I think of a publication like The Athletic, where you have articles that take you inside the team, inside the players, and really humanize them. Those personal relationships with the players are so important for some of these reporters that I think it would be a shame if, sure, if we need to keep people safe this year, okay, press conference room is fine, but you wouldn't want that to become a trend because you would lose that in-depth factor and it would become more surface reporting moving forward.
Now, I also saw that you were scheduled, at least set up to be part of the broadcast team for the Chatham Anglers and the Cape Cod League. And I just kind of looked at, obviously, like the minors and everything else, a lot of that got canceled for the season. But, I just saw a lot of some of the plays that went through there over the years, and one of them was Thurman Munson, a great Yankee. And, I'm sure they'll have you back next season, for them. But, how'd that come about? How did you actually, at least make that connection with that team to, be part of the broadcast unit?
Yeah, I'd always heard great things about the Cape League, and it was awesome to get that position. And I hope to do some stuff for them virtually over the summer, and we hope to kind of bridge the gap to the fan base as well as we can, even without a Cape League season, because we know how special that can be. One of the Fordham alumni, Dan Duva, who also went to Syracuse, was the first Chatham broadcaster. And since then, he's moved into a director/consultant role, and he's been a great mentor to all the broadcasters that have gone through there. So just getting to know him and keeping in touch with him, and then also following the league and kind of right place, right time, because they had a pair of broadcasters who did a great job who eventually moved on from the team after last year. That created the opening where, okay, it was viable for me to slide in and end up in that position. So yeah, I was grateful for the opportunity. Unfortunately, the season won't happen this time around. Yeah, and then hopefully next year there could be something going on up in the Cape, and hopefully baseball is back in full bore by that time.
All right, so now switching to the majors, looks like, inching along to getting a season. There's a lot of different proposals out there, and obviously Rob Manfred, the commission, put out his sort of 80-page manifesto of how they're going to, work the game. Obviously, it would involve once per week testing for the players and the staff around them, and they have this facility in Utah, which supposedly could turn a test around in 24 hours. But overall, do you think we're going to see baseball? Because, since signs say yes, but then it seems like the players are pushing back a little bit. How do you feel this is going to land?
My gut tells me there will be. There's the pessimistic side that everything's been postponed so many times that maybe we could not have sports this year. But I tend to think they've gotten far enough along and the owners have approved the plan for July 1st, which gives them plenty of time to play a shortened season. That leads me to believe there will be a season. Now, it could be a while before the players and the owners come to terms, because we've heard players like Blake Snell who said it in a more tone absent mindset than someone like Trevor Bauer, who actually flushed it out and explained why the players might be taken advantage of a little bit here. Those differences of opinion may take time to kind of subside, but I do think eventually baseball will be the first sport to return, because I think the logistics surrounding some of the other sports, like resuming an NBA season or resuming an NHL season, may be too tough to accomplish. I think baseball will be back. I hope it's early July. I think that would be very great to have baseball right around July 4th after all of this waiting. And then you have a shortened season, and hopefully you have a pretty normal postseason, even if it's without the fans.
Yeah, man, I don't know how basketball could do it, because they would have to resume their season, have their finals, and then, all right, as soon as you're done, you're like, that's basketball training camp, and then you have your new season 2 months later. So I don't see how they could squeeze that in. But yeah, of all the sports, I think baseball is primed up to come first, because again, they haven't started yet, and yeah, you're gonna have a shortened season, but I just don't see how the other sports, could catch up, because you're ready into your fall season as soon as you're done with the finals, unless you're just gonna beat your players like a horse.
And baseball, at least you're resuming a spring training, because that's where they were when things left off. With basketball, if you're going to throw them into the heat of competition, maybe fast forward to the playoffs, that's awfully tough to do when they were in the best shape they possibly could be for that a couple of months ago. And now they've been off for a couple of months. Working out's not the same as playing against the best athletes in the world. So ultimately, I think it's going to be harder to pull something like that off. Not saying it won't happen, but with baseball, if you come back and you have a 3 to 4 week spring training, I think you get the players in the best shape possible to have a shortened season. And at least with the shortened season, if you treat it like 162, you will keep these players fresh off that layoff and still give players days off and keep them ready and eager to go come the postseason.
Yeah, and just quickly getting back to Blake Snell a little bit. This is actually the first time I heard him speak, because obviously he plays in Tampa, so I don't listen to his press conference, stuff like that. And, so I mean, it's the first time I actually heard anything come out of his mouth, and I was just kind of surprised. Like, yeah, it was kind of off the cuff and very laid back. And I mean, I guess you kind of have to take the medium he was in. You're on Twitch, talking to fans, you kind of casual, relax. But I just think he really came off bad on that one, just because it seemed like, yes, he would be willing to risk himself if he got his normal full salary. But now if you're not going to pay me a full salary, then I don't want to take a risk. So it seems like you don't really care about the risk. It's just more about your monies. And, you have like 40 million people out of work. I think that's really where he came off looking bad on that one.
Right. If you really argue the financial aspects, like someone like Trevor Bauer did, you can completely understand why the players want their fair share. But it was the tone in which it came off, and the tone in the current environment is going to be tough to take, especially when you have an unemployment crisis in America right now, where people's livelihoods were just halted and so many lives were affected and harmed by this pandemic. And then you hear millionaires and billionaires arguing over the dollar. It's tough to take. I can understand where Snell's coming from. If he had phrased it in a better way, maybe it would have come off better. But it was probably just a no-win scenario with that tape being released, because people weren't in the mood to hear something like that. So you understand the common fans' take of just get out there and play. You can understand Snell and Bauer and all the players who want their fair share. And then just hopefully, even if it means sacrificing a little bit, they're able to get a deal that they can squeak through on. They're just okay with enough where they can get back out on the field, and then the fans will be happy.
Yeah, and I think if you're a player, I mean, again, look, everyone feels different about it. And I guess personal safety is the most concerning thing. But in terms of money, it's like, all right, you can at least make something this year. You're not putting in a full workload, or you can make zilch. And it almost hurts you, because if you go a full year without pitching, a full year without seeing the ball and hitting, it's going to hurt you for next season. So why you would want to be as fresh as possible. I don't say why you want to play from that aspect. Now, if you're just like definitely afraid because you might have, someone close to you that could be susceptible, and you don't want to catch anything and pass it, at least I can understand that point. But in terms of finances and just playing, just keeping your skills high, I don't know why you wouldn't want to play, even if it's like, again, an empty stadium out in the middle of Iowa,
I'm sure there are some varying perspectives, like you were saying, because there are some players who are trying to play for that next contract. And when baseball is back and it has fans and it's back to its fullest capacity, they're going to want to cash in. So those players who aren't going to get that contract unless they have a great year this year, that's a big deal. Playing baseball this year is a big deal. And I think it should be a bigger deal to some of the other players, as you were saying, like a Blake Snell. If you don't pitch this year, it could be very detrimental to yourself moving forward. So I completely understand why you'd want the fair share, but I would also completely understand why you'd want to get back on the field, because throwing in your workout facility is not the same as throwing against major league talent.
No, totally. And there's going to be some Yankees that, just in terms of, someone like a Brett Gardner, someone like that. It's like, have we seen the last of them? Just because, you figure out you bring him back this one. Are you going to bring him back one more season? You also have someone like a James Paxton. Obviously, after this year, they have to make a decision on them. So it's like, we want to see these players. So, yeah, I would like to have them back. But, we got to see if they can perform. There's still going to be a sharp. So I think some players like that where we don't know, we kind of need to see them. We were Tanaka as well. I mean, have we seen the last of Tanaka?
It's a great point. A lot of players on the Yankees, important players in their contract years, including DJ LeMahieu. He just came off that massive season and really broke out, made himself a fan favorite very quickly. And all of a sudden, he's going to be a free agent. So he didn't get a contract extension in the offseason. The Yankees may have had plans once he hit free agency to bring him back, but he doesn't get that second important year to at least somewhat replicate what he did in 2019 and make himself a star-like talent on the free agent market. It's going to be a much more interesting free agency case. Someone like Paxton, if baseball does return, it benefits him in the sense that he wouldn't have missed the time with his back surgery that he would have missed. But still, you need to see a decent amount of Paxton to prove to yourself that, okay, this guy who's going to be on the other side of 30 years old after this season is worth giving a 4, maybe 5-year deal to. So a lot of interesting questions on the Yankee front.
And in terms of the game, well, we don't exactly, we hear all these different proposals in terms of, putting the leagues based on region, not American League, National League. And then, well, if they're going to do it that way, it seems like we'll have the universal DH just for the season. But let's just say, we take a liking to it. I think that could also bridge, that argument now pushing DH for both leagues, even, once things move back to normal, which it seems like it was going to go that way anyway. I mean, you think something like this would accelerate that to say, hey, we tried it in 2020 and a lot of teams like it. Let's just moving forward, no more pitcher hitting.
Yeah, I think that definitely could be a precedent, especially if the National League folds to a point where they accept it for the season. That seems like it's inevitable if the season does end up happening. This has been something that's been swirling for years now. And I think people understand that seeing a designated hitter not only creates more jobs within the league for players who are on the latter end of their careers or just don't have a position to play on a given team, but it's more entertaining baseball. We want to see someone get 4 at-bats and hit a 450-foot home run rather than a pitcher laying down a bunt. I think that's where we are in the game right now. And whether you're an old school fan or not, you understand that the excitement in the game right now isn't happening on sacrifice bunts. So you want to move forward as fast as possible about making the DH universal. So if that does happen this year, I certainly could see it being the norm moving forward once the National League realizes, hey, we don't really need to be so stubborn with keeping the pitcher in the 9-hole.
Yeah, and I could see if more pitchers were better hitters and it was more exciting to watch. Like some of these pitchers, just automatic outs, and especially when you have the interleague where the American League pitcher has it hit in the National League park, it's an automatic strikeout. Literally, I think Tanaka just stands there with the bat on his shoulders, takes 3 strikes, and walks away. It's an automatic out. And if they can lay down good bunts, yeah, then do it. But some of them can't even lay down a good bunt, so it's just it's a wasted out. And the contracts these pitchers get making $200 million. I wouldn't want my guy running around the base like Chim-Ming Wong and breaking his ankle.
It's not a fun product to watch from an American League standpoint when they play the National League, because these pitchers, although they get some batting practice, they're not accustomed to that all season long. And then even on the National League side, some people argue that Madison Bumgarner is as good as some of the DHs. That's just not true. It's fun to watch him pop a home run every so often, and he's one of the better hitting pitchers we've ever seen. But you're talking about a guy with a 173 career average. So, no, he would not have a job as a DH. So, whichever way you argue it, I'm clearly pro DH, but I understand the strategy and the purity of the National League style of baseball. And I just think once you implement it for even a short amount of time, I think it's more likely that the National League will come around to it rather than prolonging the inevitable.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It was nice speaking, talking some Yankees. So again, Emmanuel Berbari, WFUV, also doing a play-by-play of college sports. So I just hope, college sports comes back soon. So you're back in the booth, where again, you're amazing, amazingly smooth. And of course, people can check you out, check your Twitter feed, see what you're working on, and wish you the best and wish baseball back soon. And just again, congratulate you on the role at WFUV. And I know you have a great career moving forward. And look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, James. I appreciate all the kind words. I always love talking to you and coming on. So I appreciate you having me again. And stay safe and be well.
All right, go Yankees.